Now live. So I'll start off by welcoming everyone to the meeting of the Joint Staff Consultative Committee. Can I please request nominations for chair for this meeting?
Ian Albert, I nominate.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was just about to ask for a seconder, but that's great. Are there any other further nominations at all?
Deathly silence.
Nope. Then I announce that Councillor Ian Albert has been elected as chair of this meeting.
Right, thank you, everyone. Right, so if we move on then. This meeting's being conducted virtually with members, officers and representatives and is streamed via YouTube. As with previous meetings, I welcome comments and discussions throughout this meeting from everyone attending. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work and to confirm that members and officers are in attendance. Robbie, do you want to do the roll call?
Thank you, Chair. So can I confirm that the following members and officers are in attendance, can hear us and that we can hear them? Councillor Daniel Allen.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Albert.
Hello.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Hoskins.
Morning.
Good morning. Councillor Bryony May.
Hello, everyone.
Councillor Claire Strong.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Ian Cooper.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. And Rebecca Webb.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Any other members or officers in attendance that I haven't called out? No. Okay, so members and officers may request to speak using the raise hand function to request to speak. And as mentioned before, the same function will be used to vote where required. The chair will notify you of when it's your turn to speak. Are there any other questions before we start the meeting? Nope. I will now hand back to the chair.
Cheers, thank you, Robbie. Apologies for absence. I don't think we've had any formal apologies unless you tell me differently, Robbie. I don't know whether Keith or
there were originally some, but now there are none. So
okay, which that takes us to item 2, which is the minutes of the 19th of March. For the purposes of clarification, the minutes of the previous meeting can be moved and seconded by members who were not present at that meeting, although it is preferable that those who were not present should abstain from voting and commenting on the motion. I'd like to propose we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the committee meeting held on the 19th of March 2025. Can I have a seconder for that? If someone can.
Happy to second.
Thank you. And everyone, colleagues, happy with that? Yep.
Yeah.
So we can take those as agreed. Louis, I think we could just see Louis arrive. Good morning. Can we hear you? Make sure we can hear you and we can see you definitely.
Morning. Yes, apologies for being late. I missed the reminder.
No problem. We've only just done the done the minute, so that's no problem at all. And welcome. Right, the meeting's been recorded and will be available on ModGov or the North Herts Council YouTube page. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the chair's announcements on the agenda, which takes us through to the SCF minutes, and thanks Ian Cooper to present the minutes from the SCF. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do my usual quick run through and avoid all the HR items because that then spoils the next item, which Rebecca will present to you. We had our usual IT updates, which covered a variety of topics. We also sort of talked about the new directorate structure, which came into force on the 1st of April, which resulted in a slight change to how we do the property services update, because that's no longer in my remit, so I don't do those anymore. But we invite Debbie along every quarter now, so she's starting to come along on that frequency. And there was also discussion around virtual parking permits for staff, so rather than physical badges, they now have virtual ones. We're looking at the uptake of those and making sure that everyone who needed one had got one. Apart from that, there was kind of various references to various topics of conversation, but that's kind of sort of main detail. But if there's any questions, happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? Claire, I can see your hand.
Yeah, I think I read in the minutes for the staff about the sad passing of Stuart Philp, one of the former chief executives, and that's the only place I've actually seen it, and I didn't know whether or not there was something we could actually put out to councillors, because there are councillors who obviously would have known Stuart.
That's a good point. We could take that way as an action, and if we haven't done so, we probably should just mention it at the start of the council meeting in July. If could leave that with you Keith, and Dan to pick up. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks for that, Claire. Yeah, that's appreciated.
I'm sure I read it in one of the staff minutes, but I couldn't. I was just flicking through again, and I couldn't see which one it was in. But I'm sure it was in there.
That's fine. Any other questions? Dan, you can see your hand.
No, I'm afraid not. This was just following on from the previous comment from Claire. James, would you be able to put that in? Because leaving it with Keith and I, we might get it not quite as right as you would.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll put something together for July Council.
Thank you, James. Yeah, thank you. That's good points. Good point. Yeah, that's fine. Any other? I mean, I suppose the only other, just one question for me, and I mean, were there any sort of particular actions you think that were taken away from those meetings that you might additionally want to bring to us, that other than you've already mentioned?
No, we're sort of fairly kind of uneventful meetings, I think, the last three of them. Looking back at the minutes, and my memory of them is kind of, I think we're kind of getting through most of the kind of the bigger issues in terms of property and things like that. So yeah, I think the staff are generally content. I'm a staff on the call who might want to at meetings as well, but that was kind of my kind of view of kind of meetings attending them.
Yeah.
Not for this meeting, but knowing that we've had all the introduction of the parking permits and all those changing in the car parking, I'm curious to know whether or not there's been any impact on the number of PCNs or anything that had been actually issued. But it's probably not for this meeting, but I would just hope that none of our members of staff have actually received any.
We could certainly note that comment and pick that up. Louis, do you see your hands up?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the parking, and what Ian said was, one, I've not had any issues from staff members regarding the changes to parking, not even like comments here or there. And then, as Ian said, it's been quiet, but quiet usually means we've been doing a good job, because it means we're getting the words out on the things that we need to, and just moving forward on the regular stuff.
Lovely, thanks for that. Okay, I can't see any other hands, so colleagues happy to approve those notes? Yeah, I can see lots of nods. Thank you. Which then takes us through to the HR update. And Rebecca, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I will run you through the paper. Starting with 3.2, which is an update on recruitment. The table within the paper shows our recruitment data and key performance indicator for Q4, which is January to March, as well as a comparison between the 2024 Q4 and the 2025 Q4. The target for vacancies filled at first attempt is 75%, and you'll see that we've met that target for this quarter at almost 79%. We've seen fewer vacancies than the same quarter last year, and the vacancies cover a variety of services across the council. And in most cases where we've been unable to fill a vacancy the first time, we have been able to fill it on the second attempt. 3.3 highlights turnover, which continues to hover around the 9% mark. It is slightly higher than the same period last year, but when we compare our turnover data to other local councils using the LGA benchmarking tool Infinistats, the percentage is broadly in line with the average for the East of England. 3.4 covers an update on national pay bargaining. We've now received a pay offer from the national employers, which is for 3.2%. across all NJC pay points, which covers the majority of our employees. The pay claim from unions was for a £3,000 increase on each spinal point. The unions are recommending that their members reject the offer, and they are balloting their members as we speak. Moving on to 3.5, which is an update on our apprentices. The LGA National Apprentice of the Year event took place in May, and 2 of our apprentices attended. It's an online event, and it brings together apprentices from across the country and encourages them to collaborate and to tackle real-world scenarios and develop solutions to challenges faced within local government. And I've included a quote from one of our attendees to show how enjoyable and valuable the event was for them. Our graduates have now settled into their second rotation, and we've completed interviews for the next cohort. The overall recruitment process is managed by the LGA, and candidates go through a robust assessment process to reach the shortlist for our panel interviews. They may receive offers from more than one employer as part of this scheme. So although we have made an offer, our preferred candidate may not choose us, and that might lead to a further round of interviews. If we are successful, we would expect the next graduate to start with us in autumn 2025. I believe there's an error on the information note there. It says 2024. Yeah. It should be 25. 3.7 is an update on learning and development. So the HR team have started to run bite-sized training sessions for managers, which are short, focused online sessions to support the increased knowledge and skills in key areas, and we'll continue to develop these based on feedback, and this action forms part of our staff survey action plan. 3.8 covers employee wellbeing and the actions that took place during Mental Health Awareness Week in May, which included signposting to internal and external resources and providing videos and information for staff around maintaining positive mental health. Moving on to 3.9 and an update on the activities of our inclusion group. The June meeting included a guest speaker from a charity called ProAge, and that charity works with organisations to create inclusive workplaces. The group also discussed the recent Supreme Court ruling on the meaning of sex in the Equalities Act, and the plan is to review the guidance that's due later this month. We're also looking to include further guest speakers at Inclusion Group to focus on other areas of inclusion to really support the development of further understanding and that continuous review of our approach to equalities, diversity and inclusion. And then finally, an update on absence. So in the last 12 months, there's been less than 9 days lost to sickness per full-time employee, and our total is 8.54. This is slightly lower than the report to the last JSCC meeting. We have seen a reduction, as expected, in cold and flu absences, and mental health absences and gastro-related absences remain similar to the last quarter. The bite-sized sessions that I mentioned earlier that have started for managers have been focused at the moment on managing short-term absence and upskilling our managers to have those appropriate conversations about absence with their team members and ensure that the right support is offered at the right time. And the HR team continue to provide support for cases of long-term absence, involve occupational health where appropriate, to support return to work and any adjustments. And throughout that process, support is signposted, including to our employee assistance programme. I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, thank you. Open to questions. I can see Dan's hand up as first. Dan.
Thank you. Is there a correlation between days taken as sickness days when people are scheduled to work in the office and days taken as sickness days when people are scheduled to work at home?
We don't know the answer to that. So working from home days are managed locally by line managers and service managers, and the data that we have on our HR system is about sickness absence.
Thank you. Can I just sort of follow up on Dan's question there is that it would have, I'm kind of expected an absences I've seen in other places where there's been working at home, and in some ways you often see the absences sort of falling, where it kind of seems broadly sort of constant. And I appreciate we've been doing working at home for quite a while now. I'm just sort of really sort of curious as to know whether you would have expected a similar trend, and maybe that the sort of level of absence has been going down. And I don't know whether we've got any kind of East of England or other benchmarking detail as how we compare on absences with other sort of neighbouring authorities.
So yes, you're right. We've had home working for several years before COVID.
Yeah.
We were supporters of home working, and so we haven't seen, there hasn't been a recent kind of reduction or increase in absences that we can link to that. I have been comparing our data with the benchmarking system that we use with the LGA. And we are broadly in line with that. They do report data in a slightly different way to how we report data to this group. And I am happy to provide some more information on that comparison via email, if that's something that you want to look at. But we're broadly in line with the average for East of England.
I think if you could provide that, and obviously that might be an opportunity, maybe if colleagues want to have a discussion about it at the next meeting. But yes, if you could supply that, that'd be really helpful. Claire, see your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of say, I think my experience, and okay, go back a few years, but for somebody who's supposed to be in the office, if you're not feeling well, you don't go into the office and you take a day sick. If you're home working that day and you're not feeling well, you probably struggle and do a bit, but you're not on what but there was often a sort of a conscious effort that if you were supposed to be in the office that day and you're not well, you don't go in and you take a day sick. But a lot of people will work through their sickness if they're home working. That's always been my experience.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I could sort of at least one other question, Rebecca. On the sort of graduate and apprentice scheme, could you remind me what the balance is between apprentices and graduates that we've got in pure sort of number terms in intake, and whether and am I right from what you'd said that we normally just look for one graduate entry? That's what we're looking for, and just really to understand as to whether that's something that we've thought about as to whether that we've got the balance right there, or indeed we should be looking for even more graduate entries in terms of going forward, if funding permitted and all those other things that we have to look at as well.
Yes, of course. So we currently have 2 graduates that were recruited last autumn. So they're on a 2-year placement with us. And the plan is to continue to recruit 1 graduate annually, and they'll be on 2-year placements. So there'll be crossover. We'll have a graduate that's been with us for a year when the new one starts, and the idea is that they can provide support to each other. And we have approximately 8 apprentices at any one time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Rebecca? Bryony. Hi, Bryony.
Yes, thank you. It's really good to hear that you've introduced personal development mornings. That sounds like a really good idea. So I'm assuming that everybody has the same personal development morning, so that they can do things together. But I'm interested to know, I'm assuming there's quite a high proportion of part-time workers within the organisation, and how that works for them.
Yes, this is a question that we get quite often. So we run our personal development mornings on a Friday morning. There is often resources provided. Sometimes we might actually run a webinar or a course during that time, but there's online resource provided as well. We are really flexible in terms of when people pick up that development. So we're clear that it should be supported for everybody, but understanding that not everyone will be there on that Friday morning. So as an example, I don't work on Fridays, and so I would pick mine up on another day in the following week or the week beforehand. And we encourage everyone that's part-time to do the same. The same applies if there are diary arrangements that can't be moved. We would suggest that people are flexible. And managers who want to do team activities during that time and have that development as a team will be aware that if they have team members that don't work on that Friday morning, they are supported to move it to a different day so that they can get everybody in at the same time.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Any other questions from colleagues? I can't see any. Well, thanks for Becca. I mean, I think the report sort of sets out some lots of really good pieces of work that are happening. So obviously, thanks to you and all those involved in that work, and thanks for that report. It's just an information note, so we don't need to vote on it. But obviously, Colin's happy to note the report, and thank you. And if we then move on to the next item, which is the discussion paper around succession planning and future proofing, and Rebecca to present. Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. Would you like me to run through the paper or open to questions?
If you wouldn't mind, we've got quite a few new colleagues on the committee. So that would be really helpful.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. So succession planning focuses on identifying and growing talent to fill leadership and business critical positions in the future, and it's closely linked to talent management. At the council, we are committed to the development of our staff. It's always been important, but arguably even more so now in light of the local government reorganisation, which highlights the importance of teams and individuals that are prepared for evolving demands. We encourage staff to develop in a number of ways through both formal and informal training and development. We support staff to complete formal qualifications wherever possible. There are opportunities for secondments and acting up throughout the organisation, and discussions with line managers at regular performance reviews, which is our appraisal process, and during one-to-ones is vital to this process, along with HR support and advice. Succession planning and nurturing talent can support retention, but we recognise that with the council's flatter structure, there may not always be a role to progress into, which has resulted in individuals seeking promotion opportunities elsewhere. It is important to note that we've benefited from staff developing into roles with other authorities and then returning to us with a wider knowledge and experience when an appropriate role becomes available. When there's been turnover, several senior roles in the council have been filled by internal candidates in recent years, and there are many examples of employees at all levels of the organisation achieving promotions within the council. In addition to developing staff for their next role, we're looking to the future and preparing staff to adapt to the changes in the world of work, and we've incorporated the apprenticeship levy as one of the tools to facilitate staff development. And we have several staff developing their digital skills and knowledge to support the workforce of the future. Examples of levy usage here include courses covering AI for business value, data insights for business decisions, and advanced software engineering. Utilising the apprenticeship levy or any other form of learning and development undertaken by staff does come with challenges, and the primary issue is that there's a constraint on time and workload with staff, and the levy, the apprenticeship levy, if we're using it, requires 20% off the job learning. So employees are already managing substantial responsibilities, so we support them to find options that work for them in terms of method of learning and course duration. The future will bring new structures, roles, processes and technologies, and it's vital that our staff are not only prepared for these challenges, but can also use them as an opportunity. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, so really open for sort of questions and indeed, obviously, discussion. Thrown to colleagues. Claire. Oh, you're on mute, Claire.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Ian. I mean, I do like this subject, and I've always said that I actually think in an organisation churn is good, because when people move around, it opens up those opportunities for others. And also, if staff do leave us, I think we always should be proud that we've been part of their journey in their employee life. The fact that some come back to us is always good, but to me, it's never a negative. If we haven't got the opportunities and we've got an employee who's out, is really talented and is outgrown and is going to go and further their careers, then we should be proud of that. But I think we've got a very strong record internally of actually being able to show that we have done some very good succession planning. And I think we saw that at full council this week, where our new monitoring officer has been somebody who's come from within. So, and it is a balance, but for the really good people, we're never always going to be able to satisfy them with the opportunities that they want in their career. And I think we just have to understand that. But when they do leave, that in a way that's more churn, and that gives others within that chain and their opportunities to fill those gaps. So it's something we have to be very good. Something we have to be very mindful of, and make sure that we're always giving the right training to all our employees, so that they do have the skill sets that they can either take up and further their careers with us or outside of us.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. That's a really good point. Bryony?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Claire just said. I'm interested to know how you go about sort of recognising potential to progress. Obviously, that you mentioned the regular performance reviews and one-to-ones, but are there any particular tools that you use to identify those that you think have the potential to develop further?
Rebecca, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, thank you. We don't have a formal process where we highlight kind of rising stars, and I know some organisations do that. We approach it in a more informal way. We do use the RPR process and the one-to-one process to be able to do that. And
just what you said that, and just remind me the RPR process.
RPR, the RPR is regular performance review, so that's our
I thought so, but just wanted to make sure I got the right terminology. Thank you.
So managers are supported by HR through that process, and they will indicate to us if they think they have somebody with potential, and that's when we start to have those conversations about what a career path might look like, what training might be appropriate, and that kind of thing. But as I say, it's a more informal process that we run.
Mm-hmm. Just thank you. From my experience, often it's those people that don't recognise it in themselves as well. So it's that sort of two-way dialogue between the individual and their manager, isn't it? To sort of give them confidence to take the next step, for example. So how often do you do your regular performance reviews and one-to-ones? Is that quite a regular occurrence?
Yes. So the regular performance review is something that should be continuous. So you have a snapshot annually, which is the kind of longer conversation where you look back at what's been achieved and then look forwards to where to go next. And then within that, monthly, sometimes more often, there are conversations where there'll be more detailed conversations, and that will be more of a one-to-one, but it will refer back to what was discussed in that RPR meeting as well. When you just noted about confidence, we have a coaching and mentoring scheme that we run. So it's if people come forward to us, we will be looking to support, and we do have examples where people have highlighted that they want to progress but lack in confidence, and they can see that in themselves. So we look to focus in that area as well. And we're looking to run a confidence workshop specifically targeted at women because of the gender pay gap, but that's something that we're getting in place in the next few months as well.
That's great, thank you.
I think that, I mean, that was a really good point that you made. I think about the question you asked, Bridie, because I think there's always a bit of a danger there that there are some people who are very confident and will put themselves forward for almost anything, and clearly making sure that across the organisation that we are, encouraging people who maybe don't have that kind of same level of confidence, to put themselves forward. And I think also there is the importance, obviously, recognising both in terms of our diversity as well, in terms of of making sure that we're encouraging people across the organisation. I think that's really important as well, because again, there's certainly evidence we've seen in other organisations where that doesn't always happen and consistently. And I guess particularly that where we look at how sort of, Rebecca, we're looking sort of providing that sort of either encouragement or support maybe to people who are sort of part-time workers, for particularly those with other caring or other sort of needs, to feel that they have that kind of confidence to be able to step forward maybe to a job in a more senior job, bearing in mind that they're probably still only going to be able to work part-time, to do it.
So I am somebody that is part-time, and I believe, and we always look to ensure that opportunities are equal, whether somebody's full-time or part-time. That shouldn't make any difference. So from a development perspective, that is the approach that we would take. In terms of applying for more senior roles, we're clear in our job adverts that we are open to, so even when we say a job is full-time, we make it clear that we're open to conversations about what that might look like for a particular candidate, for the right candidate. Yeah. And we have a really clear policy around flexible working. So staff that are internal are able to request flexible working, and that is always seriously considered and generally supported. We also have lots of examples, I think, of senior members of staff who are working flexible hours.
And it's good to see we're getting a more sort of diverse senior management team and things like that. And that sets a really great example, going forward. But yeah, no, thanks for that, Rebecca. Keith, your hand.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I think this council has a strong track record of promoting from within, really. In fact, I'd be intrigued to know sort of the figures on what vacancies are filled from within and what are external. I'd wonder whether that will become more important as the full impacts of local government reorganisation are realised. Do you foresee difficulties in recruiting if there is a short-term life on a local authority?
I suspect, recruitment has been an ongoing issue for local government. And we have definitely seen that. I think that we've started to see that improve over recent months. But of course, with local government reorganisation on the horizon, there may be more issues. It's definitely about monitoring that situation as we move forward, especially if we start to see increased turnover as well. But yes, I would suspect that even with the some great advertising and the national recruitment campaign, which is out there now, encouraging people to get involved with jobs for their local authorities, the instability around LGR will have an impact on our attraction of candidates, and we need to continue to sell the council as a great employer, which is what we always try to do, and we need to continue with that messaging so that we can keep attracting those good candidates.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other sort of comments or questions from colleagues? Well, I think hopefully that's been a helpful discussion, and thanks for that paper, Rebecca, which obviously gives us a real good picture on what's happening, and I think some really positive stories to reflect back to to obviously to councillor colleagues and obviously the staff more generally. So thank you for that. Again, obviously this was just a discussion paper, so colleagues happy to approve that paper. Yep, thank you. Which then takes us on to the next discussion paper on microaggressions and unconscious bias in the workplace. And again, obviously, Rebecca, if you could just maybe take us through an introduction to that paper.
Of course, thank you, Chair. Okay, a microaggression is a comment or action that negatively targets a marginalised group. They're often linked to stereotypes. They can be unintentional or intentional, and whilst they may seem subtle, the impact can be significant, particularly in relation to the person's mental health and emotional well-being. They can accumulate over time, leading to a hostile work environment and a reduction in employee morale. How a person thinks can depend on their life experiences. Sometimes a person will have beliefs and views about other people that may not be right or reasonable. Unconscious bias leads to automatic judgments we make about others based on stereotypes or preconceived notions, and it can lead to unfairness in how people are treated. Both microaggressions and unconscious bias can hinder diversity and inclusion efforts, affecting team dynamics and overall organisational performance. It's crucial to address microaggressions and unconscious bias to foster a respectful and productive workplace. We're committed to creating an environment where all employees feel valued and respected at the council. And this is reflected in our value inclusion and supported by the ongoing work of our inclusion group. Failing to address microaggressions and unconscious bias can have severe consequences in terms of increased employee turnover, reduced job satisfaction, employee disengagement, potential legal ramifications, negative reputational impact for the council as an employer, and it can hinder our ability to attract and retain good employees. By proactively addressing these issues, we can create a more inclusive and supportive work environment, ultimately enhancing organisational performance and employee well-being. To combat these issues, the council has implemented several initiatives, including recruitment training, which covers unconscious bias, e-learning modules on our learning management system, including equalities, diversity and inclusion. The inclusion group have produced posters to further develop employee awareness of microaggressions, and there are a couple of examples of the posters shown on the paper. We hold personal development mornings focusing on unconscious bias and microaggressions, and the inclusion group HR team and leadership team have attended training on microaggressions. So in terms of next steps, it's necessary that we address microaggressions and unconscious bias. And those next steps would include additional training and awareness to further develop employee understanding of inclusion, diversity and equalities. This will include bite-sized sessions for managers and encourage employees to consider their own biases. And we're planning to relaunch our values, which will further embed the value of inclusion. So I'm happy to take questions, but I'm also interested to understand whether councillors are aware of these issues and whether there are any other ideas in terms of how we might address unconscious bias and microaggressions.
Can I just ask a quick question, and I've sort of opened it out to the wider? And I found this a really helpful paper, Rebecca, so thank you. Is a microaggression here solely related to targeting a marginalised group, or can it just be, is there a more generic microaggression that isn't necessarily targeting a a marginalised group? Because I'm conscious that in terms of people's, behaviours, whether consciously or unconsciously, is the way they say things at meetings that isn't necessarily about that you can have almost that similar sort of thing happening more broadly and not just necessarily targeting one particular group or another.
Yes, that's really interesting. I'm sure that there can be comments or actions, as you've described, that don't target a marginalised group. I think that the definition of a microaggression is related to a marginalised group.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. No, that's helpful. Keith.
Yeah, thanks. I've found this really interesting and fascinating paper, actually, and it does give you pause for thought all the time. I mean, being the great age that I am, of course, I look back to how we operated in business 30, 40 years ago, and the whole thing was transformed for the better, has to be said. Yeah, I welcome this and thank you, because it certainly did make me not question my own behaviour, but made me realise how far we've come in our attitudes in the workplace over the last 3 or 4 decades. So thanks for that.
Thank you. I mean, on that note, I mean, to what extent then, Keith, were you sort of aware of those sort of issues, or and indeed whether you think other councillor colleagues are to what extent they're aware of these issues?
Well, yeah, I think you are increasingly aware, but it's always helpful to have the reminder.
Yeah.
Because you can, particularly if you're not of the current generation, the way that you've grown up over the years. So it doesn't hurt to be reminded that there are these issues.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thanks for that, Keith. I've got Dan, then Bryony. Dan.
Sorry about that. I think the posters you've put up around the office about the microaggressions are fantastic. I've seen various different ones. I think they're very good. It's definitely something. I did the unconscious bias training on Grow Zone, which I think we should push everybody to do. I think it's an important thing to have to do. And it's a real thing and constant. And if any of you are on social media, you'll be receiving it all the bloody time. I've currently got the local Reform Party who've nicknamed me the Ginger Whinger and are posting about that constantly. So yeah, you can laugh, but it actually pisses me off massively.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's all good fun.
Yeah, and I think and obviously that's certainly around generally about the way. And I'm interested there your view, sort of, Rebecca, about how to what extent microaggression, in the way that sort of example that Dan gave, comes out in relation to what care we need to take in terms of social media posts. Because it might not be just something that's face to face, but it can be done quite remotely on a Facebook, Twitter, whatever sort of social media you might use.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we will see it face to face in meetings, online, definitely through social media. I think the important thing and the thing we're working on with staff is around developing their skills to be able to challenge it in the moment, which is hard to do. And you need to recognize it, process it, and then be able to say the right thing. But also try to get people to see that we all have bias, and it's about understanding what your own bias is, recognizing that, and then working on challenging it when you can see it coming out in your behavior or in a comment. But yes, we will see it everywhere, within the workplace, outside of the workplace, social media, TV. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Got Bryony, then Claire. Bryony.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I've been aware of these for a long time, but I've never, until very recently, had it sort of defined as, giving it a label in a way, which is a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? I think giving it a name helps to helps those to call it out. And I think what you just said, Rebecca, about that is the key thing. It's about a culture within the organisation that people don't just dismiss. They get a feeling about what somebody said to them, and they just think, oh, it's just me being, sensitive about something. But actually, you sit back and think, actually, no, that is no. And then having the confidence to be able to say, to call it out and have a conversation about it in a diplomatic way. It's bringing us all forward together, isn't it? And making us more aware of the impact of the words that we use sometimes. So I think it's useful to label it, but actually I think what we actually do under that banner is much more important than giving it that name. And I really like the posters. I suspect you've got others as well that even if you just look at one of the bubbles and sort of think about it from your own point of view, it's a good thought experiment, isn't it? So
Yes,
thank you for
absolutely.
the work you're doing around this.
I'm happy to send you the rest of the posters so that you can see all of them, because I think that they're really good. I'm really pleased with what the group produced, and we appreciate how difficult it is to challenge if you've recognised bias or a microaggression. So we have been talking with Inclusion Group about developing their skills so that they can then support others and give advice, as well as HR, to staff if they come across that kind of situation. It's tricky, but we need to move forward together with it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Claire?
Yeah, I was going to say it's a really prickly subject, because it's one of those ones that a lot of people don't want to discuss. And Keith, you're absolutely right. We're of an era. We've come a long way, and certainly I know the sort of, again, for me, sexual bias being a woman in a man's world, but I'm not going to go there. However, I think some of the points that have come out, I think it's how we manage it and deal with it. And again, managers and the training that they have, leading by example and having regular conversations with employees, because if employees are feeling that they're on the receipt of unconscious bias, or then it's that we've got to know that we're fostering an atmosphere in the council where people can feel that they can talk about it, and because nothing is going to get better and you're not going to fix it unless we can actually talk about it. And I know we've got a lot of training, and I must admit I haven't been in the DCO, so I haven't seen all the posters. Apologies for that, but I would appreciate sending out all the posters. Maybe they could be sent out to all of the councillors, because you did put this question mark. What about councillors? Yes, and we need it probably just as much as the employees do. As I said, it is one of those very prickly subjects, and sometimes you do have to, though, even employees need to understand that sometimes it's, if an employee thinks sometimes they've got to get it in the right context of how they are perceived when they're in the workplace. And that's the help and training that employees need to have as well, to be able to make the most of the career that they have with us without feeling that they're, that they feel, we want employees to be opened out, and every employee to not have that unconscious bias between themselves as employees. It's not just in the manager-employee relationships, it's all employees together. Prickly subject. I think you've done an absolute great job in actually what we've done here. But I think, the messages, getting that out and everybody talking about it is the real key.
Yeah, absolutely. We recognise that this is an ongoing conversation. It's not a job that's going to be complete at any point. It's ongoing work. And we, HR and Inclusion Group, work on that kind of drip feed with the messages. So we have sessions, we have networks that run, we have sessions at staff briefing or at SMG, our senior managers group, as well as information going in our monthly magazine online. So it's that constant messaging and ongoing work.
Can I just ask one question? Do we ever survey staff about how they feel on this subject, or have we?
We have. There were inclusion-based questions in the staff survey last year. Yes.
And how did those come out? did you feel? And when will we test that again?
We will probably start to look at pulse surveys, and we can definitely do a focus on inclusion. There were some actions within the staff survey action plan around inclusion, continuing to get that message out there. And I would need to refer back to the action plan to give you specifics on that, but I can do that for you.
Yep. Thank you. Just before I sort of bring Ian in, it was coming, I think, really from earlier in our discussion, indeed my earlier question, Rebecca. I guess the other side of the coin of my earlier question, in a way, I haven't thought about it a bit more, was that clearly that when we're talking about a microaggression here that negative targets a marginalised group, at the point that someone may or may make that comment, they may or may not know that they're dealing with a person from a marginalised group. We have a lot of people with hidden disabilities and things that are less obvious. And I guess the question of how we deal with that, and obviously, I suppose it's obviously how we remind people, I don't know whether it's counsellors, it's staff, it's just generally how we remind people about the importance of language and what the people say and write in all circumstances, because you don't know who you're necessarily dealing with, but actually it doesn't matter who you're dealing with. You shouldn't be saying some of these sort of things in the first place, which is almost in a sense that a comment is just, it can be inappropriate no matter who it's to. But yeah. I've got Ian and then Dan. Ian.
Yeah, on that point, I'll make another point in a minute. Yeah, you shouldn't make assumptions about anyone, and therefore you should be kind of sort of seeking what everyone's the same. I think also part of this is around, if people do make mistakes, around helping them to learn from them, and kind of making them realise they've made a mistake and then move on from it. It's not about necessarily around punishment; it's around learning from it. The other point I was going to make was linked to the staff survey point. One of the things on the action plan from there was how supporting managers and having the conversations with their staff at one-to-ones around how they're feeling, and kind of making that a real meaningful conversation. I think that's kind of a good place to have this kind of bit around, if this is happening repeatedly, being that confidence to your manager so we can do something about it.
Yeah, thanks. Dan?
I'll be honest, Ian Cooper's just put what I was going to say far more succinctly and politely than I would have probably said it. So yeah, just don't be an idiot to people.
Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah. Louis?
I was just going to comment from a inclusion group member perspective, in that we had quite a lengthy couple of sessions over microaggressions where we discussed it, and it was really interesting to have that discussion. I think just having that discussion is a great starting point, because it gets people talking about it, and then also the ways in which you handle it. And I think the key takeaway we took from all those discussions is that we can't, or even if someone does act out in a particular way, you can't turn it into a negative situation. You sort of have to positively influence people rather than negatively influence people, in saying, how did this perceive X person and that, and show them why, rather than being like, oh well, slap on the wrist, you've done something bad. It's doing it a positive way, so it's reaffirmation rather than punishment.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think just perhaps to conclude is that I think it's been a really good discussion. It's a really interesting paper that you brought, Rebecca, and also thanks to the work for the inclusion group. And we certainly like to see the posters, and those could be circulated widely. I think there's a value in making sure that certainly from councillor colleagues are aware of these things and think about these things, and how we build that into any kind of training, induction, and other type programs. I think that's really important. And I think more broadly, these are hugely important issues. And as I see around the place and in some councils now, sadly, since the May elections, where diversity and inclusion is being derided or devalued in some places, I think the importance of our council setting a really great example is hugely important, and I really value this work and these kind of discussions and this sort of meeting that where we can talk about them and actually really I think begin to think about these things in a bit more detail. So really appreciated the discussion today. I hope colleagues have found that valuable. Certainly would like to sort of make sure our other wider group councillors are aware of those things and how we can build that into sort of training and induction, and circulate the posters. And colleagues happy to approve that paper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. That was a really valuable discussion.
Right. Could I just raise something?
Yeah, go on, Dan. Yeah.
Rebecca, would it be suitable to have a 5-minute presentation at the beginning of a council meeting on this?
We could do something like that.
It could be just digital only. You wouldn't have to come in person. It could be an online thing where we could just have a 5-minute thing showing the different posters up on the screens and just letting people know, look, this is something you need to be aware of. What do councillors think to that?
Would you do it as a part of the actual full council meeting, or would we do it as a sort of a 6:30 training session, or a 7 o'clock training session for 15 minutes?
My issue with that is people don't turn up to them because they're in a rush to get in from work. I know it's an awful thing to say, but it's also a realistic thing to say. And also, it's not a bad thing for people online to see that we are doing these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, happy to take everyone's opinions on it.
I think there'd be a value to do it. It's probably just looking at the nature of the agenda of a meeting. I'm conscious if because I think this will take more, or could take more than 5 minutes if we're to go through this. We've spent quite a long time on it, but it might take a few more minutes than just 5. So more than happy to do it, but probably just balancing on whether we've got a slightly lighter agenda or something of that kind that but I do think it would definitely be valued to have that. Yeah.
If we had a light agenda, maybe we could do it at 7:30 and then do the full council at 8. I know that probably horrify an awful lot of people.
Yeah. No,
but I take what you say, Dan, because a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm not turning up for that."
Yeah.
So the catchment of putting it on the agenda for full council.
Yeah. Okay, could it be something that we consider for future use at the council? Future.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah, something we'd take away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, which then I think takes us to get my head round the suggested discussion topics for future meetings. You see, there's a list of discussions that have taken place at past meetings of the JSCC. There's a little list of possible items: employment rights, short-term absence, flexible working, social media for recruitment, employer value proposition, change management, employee retention in times of uncertainty. Do any of those sort of trip out to colleagues for interest for a discussion, or indeed anything else that you could think of that might be useful for a discussion at, say, our next meeting? See, Brian, I see your hand. Brian?
Yes, thank you. I was thinking it would be worth having a conversation around the Supreme Court ruling at some point and how the authority is responding to it. So I think we're expecting some guidance fairly soon, aren't we, on that?
That might well be in the discussion. Rebecca, do you have a view? Would that be something that we could maybe discuss?
Yeah, we could cover that. I would probably cover it in the information note if we didn't have a discussion paper on it. So
Yeah.
it's up to you how you wish to
Yeah.
approach.
Well, Brian, do you think a discussion might be useful on that one, like bit like we've just done on these last two items?
Yeah, I don't mind which way it's done because we get the opportunity to
Yeah.
ask questions
Yeah.
anyway, so
Yeah.
it's fine.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, Claire.
Yeah, the one in the middle, the employer value proposition. What would that cover?
Rebecca.
Well, I can talk to you about what it is, and why it's important. It's basically what we as an employer offer to candidates and why it's important to consider it as a whole, without going into any more detail.
Well, I mean, I was kind of, when I looked at the list and the kind of that one stuck out to me, and I'm thinking, do I understand exactly what's in this? Maybe that's the paper for me then, because to educate me. I mean, I know a lot of it, and I know when we've had discussions, and it could have been Louis who actually said the reason he likes working for NHDC is because of the flexibility, and it suits him, and that's what he values as an employee. But oh, he's nodding, and he's come back. He's put his camera on. He's nodding at me now. I saw your camera go off, Louis. But and I think that's always something, you know, is drilling into. You know, we've got some fabulously good, talented people working for us, and they stay with us, and we've got to retain them.
Yeah.
And we've got to help them further their careers as well. It's you know, it's so maybe that one's the one for me.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? I think from my perspective, I think, and I'm not saying for the next meeting, I'm happy to to go with the two that we've just talked about for our next meeting. I do think there will be a value in talking about change management along one of our meetings. That's going to be a really big issue in going forward. It doesn't necessarily have to be at our next meeting, but I'd definitely like it to be within our next couple of meetings to do something around change management, you know, particularly in the local government reorganisation world and so much other things that are going on anyway. I think that would be a real value. Dan?
I second that. I would particularly like to have that as an option to be discussed as well. And I'd also request that when we have that, I'd like to invite the exec for LGR to attend as well, if that would be okay with everybody. So they've been involved in the conversation that we've had.
Yeah. So we've got, I think, three sort of potential sort of options there. Perhaps I'll seek either Ian and Rebecca's advice. Is it really normally we'd sort of take one or two of these at a meeting, or what's the norm here, or I'm really open to sort of your views.
We would usually pick up one or two in any one meeting, rather than three.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think probably so. I think change management is really important. I guess it's sort of just a judgment call as to whether the next week when's our following meeting after October? Is it we got one in January time? Will that be the committee services colleagues? No,
The 28th of January, I believe.
28th of January. So I guess the question for the change management one is to whether the October or the January one might be better. I mean, I'm open-minded to where we take that. And Dan?
Can I make a suggestion that we give it till January, because we will then know how the unitaries are going to be breaking down, and breaking down, probably not good wording. how are
Yes.
going to be separated. And that might be helpful as far as the change management goes.
Okay, so suggest then
Yeah.
change management for January, but we take those other two topics, the employer value proposition and clearly the sort of Supreme Court stuff and the new guidance around that, maybe as the two for the next meeting. Is that okay with colleagues?
Yeah.
Right.
I would think personally, I think change management, I think it's a little bit premature for the next meeting, but I also think that when we do it in January, I think it would be a single topic.
Yeah,
I think it's I've got that sort of tense that it's going to be
no,
quite
I
a
think that
biggie to discuss.
Yeah.
To do it
that makes
properly.
sense. That may well make sense. We'll probably have quite a bit to talk about. So happy with that. So colleagues, happy to go with those two for the next meeting, and the change management one we'll take in the January meeting, and we'll certainly take up Dan's suggestion. Obviously, we can invite the executive member for that as well to the meeting. Right.
Maybe next meeting we ought to also then decide what we want to put as our topic for March.
Yes, we could. Yeah.
Do that. We can do that in October.
Yeah. Perfect. Right. I think, unless anyone tells me differently, I think that comes to the end of this meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. Hopefully, everyone's found that really valuable. Thanks, Rebecca, particularly for putting all the papers together and leading the discussions today. It's been really valuable. So our next meeting is on the 15th of October, and we'll close the meeting. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Thanks a lot then.
Thanks.
Cheers then. Bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks for chairing, Ian.
Thank you.